So I want to welcome everyone to MPAC's Let's Talk Solutions for FIMS. Today we'll be focusing on data grids. A couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this and you will be able to find a link to this and on our knowledge base as well as past Let's Talk Solutions. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter it in the Q&A below. I'm Amy Strom, the Director of Client Success here at NPACT, and today you'll be hearing from Robin with Leanne available for all our questions on the back end. Let's take a quick look at the agenda. Robin plans to cover an intro to data grids, including views, toolbar options, and additional menu options, the different types of data grids, and how to create a new view. We do have handouts that will be distributed after this meeting as well. With that, take it away, Robin.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen. So welcome everybody to the mystery of FIMS data grids. It's April, the weather is nice, and it's very exciting to be in spring. So with that said, what is a data grid? So essentially, data grids list records and tables such as profiles or funds or gifts or grants and contacts. When you first open a module, and this applies to all modules with the exception of General Ledger, this displays the data grid. So you can actually select a record from within the data grid to work with. So if I was to double click on Bethany Abelson, I have access to any of the tabs with the information for Bethany Abelson. If I want to go back to my data grid screen, there's two ways I can get there. I can either click on the search button up here, or for those of you that like to use your keyboard, the F3 key will also take you back to the main data grid. Now, like I said, all of the modules except for General Ledger has customizable data grids. So the next question I'm going to answer is, what is a data grid view? So each of these data grids is customizable, and each data grid comes with a default view. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner here, is the drop down and it says default view. So I know that this is what I'm actually looking at right now. Now there's also in each of these modules, depending where you are, there are also system defined views that actually came with your system. So they may have been delivered in an update, or they may have come with your original FIMS, but there are system defined views that you can use. They're similar to the standard FIMS reporting. They're there, you can use them. And you can also copy them if you want to create a new view just a little bit differently than something that has been delivered with your system. So you can configure multiple data grid views that only show fields that you are interested. So depending on what you are doing, you may definitely have multiple views in the system. So I'm going to start with and show you what some of the things are that you can create, because I know it's always nice to be able to get a visual of, well, what would I use this? Why might I want to use this data grid view? So I'm going to start with, in this little button over here, the top one, the orange one that looks like it's a little magnifying glass. If you click on that, this is actually going to show you a list of the data grid views that are in your system. And here's the default view that we have. So let me find, all right. So I'm going to show you alternate address view. So what I've done here is I've created a view that has pulled the information from the alternate address tab and put it into this view. So I have added a column that tells me what the alternate address type is, and then what the address is, the email information, If it is a recurring alternate address, I've got the beginning and ending date fields in here. So all of this information can be configured into one place so that you don't have to keep going to the alternate address tab for all of the alternate addresses. Another one that I've created to take a look at the data is called board members. So what this is, it's a listing of the board members and what their from and through terms are, dates are. So if you notice the term from and term through, just as an FYI, those are not system defined fields in FIMS. I have the field maker module and I created 2 custom fields to actually keep track of what the board members from and through dates are. Another one I created to give you another idea of what you can do with data grid views is called bulk mail. So there's a feature in FIMS that allows you to, I like to think of it as kind of a head of household feature. So it's a bulk mail feature that can be invoked when you export names and addresses for a mailing. So this is just telling me what the ID code is of the profile, and if the ID code of the bulk mail field is different. So another way to kind of consolidate this data and look at it in one place. Another thing I did is I have assigned affiliation codes to deceased donors in my database. So if I just happen to want to see a list of all of those profiles, I can do that here as well. So you're probably getting an idea that there's lots of things that you can do with data grid views to look at your information in different ways. Let me just go to the fund module and show you. So here is, I'm actually in the fund module now, and this is a view that I created that's actually showing me current fund balances and the available to spend amount within the fund module. So this is all in one screen. I have the date that it was established. I've also included the date that the fund was retired, because if there is a date retired in this field, the fund balance should definitely be 0. So this is also a good way to kind of check and see if you have funds that have been retired that possibly still have balances that shouldn't be. And I've also sorted by the smallest to the largest amount. So just another thing that you can do. This one is in the fund module. And just one other is, let me find it. So here's one that's called founders. So this has the fund ID field, the sort name, the fund name, but it also, I have filtered this view and I said I've only wanted to see the founder of the fund. So that's what I'm looking at here. I've also created one for donor advisors to the funds. So I have, like, Bridges Fund has more than one donor advisor, so I can see all of those names right here in this data grid view. So again, just another way to kind of pull this information together into one view so you don't have to go looking in multiple profiles. Data grid views can also be used to answer a question. One of those questions might be, let's say you want to see a list of donor advised funds that have not received any gifts during a certain time period. So if I click the drop down here, no gifts. So this is a view that I created because I said I wanted to see donor advised funds that have not received any gifts between 2015 and 2017. So I have a field for the actual year, the fund ID, the sort name, the date the fund was established. So this is just kind of a query into the database and into the data. Views can be used for that as well. And just one more before we move on, I want you to see. Okay, so I just went to the gift module and I'm going to go to find my, Hold on 1 second here.
While you're looking for
Okay.
that, Robin, there has been a request to see if you can show the GL overrides view.
So the GL overrides view. Yes, let me put that on hold for just 1 second and I'll be happy to show that after. GL overrides. I'll make myself a note. Okay. So this is one that I created past donors for a mailing. So what I have done is I've put it in a column that says last gift date. So this is the last time that this donor has given, and I've sorted by date. So if for some reason you want to send out a mailing or a blast email, you can put that information into the data grid view and see who hasn't contributed in a while. There's also a column for gift total and what the last gift amount was that they made. So for example, David Sanborn made a gift of $10,000 on 12/22/2007 was the last gift date. So the information can be exported from here and used for a mailing. So just another way to think and look at the data. So the GL overrides, so that's a good question. I am not sure whether that's working because I have lots of stuff in here as I'm trying things, but I will see. GL overrides. Here we go. Let's see. Let me just take a quick peek and see. Yes, so this has a fund ID column, the fund name, the alpha sort name, and then it has the fund class of the fund. So what I've done is put a couple different columns here. Debit principal asset, debit income asset. So yes, you can take the GL overrides values and put them into a data grid view as well. That's a great question. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to the profile module and I'm going to actually walk through and let you know what each of these buttons is that goes down the left-hand side. So this is the data grid options toolbar. And then I'm going to show you other options because if you right click in the data grid, there are options here on the right click menu that are only accessible from the right click menu. So I'll walk through what you have for options there as well. So this first one here is called view settings. And view settings is where you can go to make changes. If you want to change a data grid that you have created, you can create a new one from scratch. You can copy something and you can see whatever the pieces that are available here. So that's the first button on the list. The next one here is save view settings. So if for some reason I'm here, maybe I want to shrink some of these columns down, they're a little bit too big, I make some changes, you can use this save button right here. This says save view settings. So that will save any of the changes that I've made. Keeping in mind here that you cannot make changes to any views that you didn't create. So there's no worry that you're going to accidentally delete somebody's view or make a change they didn't want you to make. You can only make changes to views that you have created. The next button that we have here is process selections. And what this does is it allows you to use these data grid views that you have created as essentially an ad hoc report writer. So if I wanted to run a report of that list of deceased profiles, I could do that. I could also export. So for example, the view that I showed you with donors that haven't donated in a while, you can include their name and address information and export that all straight from the data grid view for your mail merge letters that you might be sending out. You can create labels from here. You can add contacts and or affiliations to the profiles from using process selections as well. And just as an FYI, if you see things in here, the term email, my system is not a hostnet. Email options are only available for on-premise FIMS customers, and I have this one installed on my local hard drive, so that's why all of my email functions are visible. This one right here, so if I wanted to go back to the default view from here, all I do is click on that, and then it brings me right back to my default view. This one here resets the sort order. So if you've made changes to the sort order, this will reset it back to the indexed field of the primary table. So for example, I'm in the profile module. This would reset the sort back to the profile ID code. The next button here is tag all. So if I click on the tag all button, if you notice this little skinny column on the left-hand side now is all checked. I have tagged the records that are in this particular view. And then if I click the next button, it's going to untag all of those records. Okay, I'm going to move over to the right-hand side of the screen over here, and I'm going to start with this find again. So I'm going to change my search to last name. And then the record that I want to find all records, all profiles that have the last name of Smith. So it's going to take me to the first profile in my data grid that has the last name of Smith. This find again button, if I click on that, it's going to go to the next record. And then find again is just going to keep filtering through all of the records that have the last name of Smith. The little button to the right of it that says find all is literally going to find all of the records with the last name of Smith. So I have 22 profiles in my data in this particular data grid that have the last name Smith. And then you have one other button over here, and that is to tag them all. So now I have 22 records tagged. If I go back to my process selections, you also have the ability here on the right-hand side. So I could run a report of tagged items only. And if I say OK here, this is going to show me the 22 records that I just tagged in my data grid. And from here, you can print, or you could save this to a text file, depending on what you wanted to do. Okay. At the bottom left, I'm going to come back to the bottom left here, and to demonstrate that one, I'm going to go to the gift module, and I'm going to go to gift history. So here, this one is going to allow me to total the records in the data grid. So for this purpose here today, this is my gift history tab. It's the default view. It's showing me every record in the database. But if you had created a custom view that was only a subset of the gifts in your system, you could run a data grid totals, and here are the columns that you can choose to total. So I'm going to total the gift amount and the non-gift amount. You also have the ability to sort them as well. And so this is going to tell me that the total gift amounts were $8,502,000. Non-gifts were $980.25. So any of your data grid views that have values like your grant history, the same button applies. And then the last one here is called View Statistics. And this just generates a report that tells you total gifts, minimum, maximum, average, and total non-gifts in the same. And then a total at the bottom. And it tells me I have 360 records in that gift history tab. All right, now we're going to look at your right-click options in the data grid. So if I right-click, some of these are also in other places. Some of them are part of the data grid tool buttons on the left. I'm going to cover the ones that are only available by right-clicking. So here, the first one I have is Save View As. Let's say, for example, the default view is great, but I want to add a couple fields. If you click on the Save As, this is going to give you the screen where you can go ahead and give the view a new name and decide whether you want to share that, whether it's going to be optimized or full view, which I'll get into in just a little bit. And if you want to put a description in here, so if it's something you're sharing you think might be helpful to somebody else, put a description in here so they know what this was generated for. The next one that we have is untag selected, tag and untag selected. So let's say, for example, let me go back to my profile module and I'll go back to my Smith. If I right click here, I can untag the selected records, just those selected records. So that's an option. Another option you have here is lock columns. So if you look, let me scroll over to the right. If you notice, my first three columns are not moving. That's because I have locked the columns so that I can still see the sort name for each of those. So if you go to lock columns, you can see you can actually choose which column you want to lock on. And then to remove it, you just come back in and choose 0. You can also move columns. So if you click on move columns, you have the order right here where you can move them up or down, or you can move one to the first or move it to the last. You can also move your columns around when you're setting up the view or making changes from within the view settings button, but this is available to you here from right clicking. Okay, one other thing in the right click is view hide profile grouping. So if you're not using profile grouping, this won't make a lot of sense, but I will show you what this does. So if I find my John Hunt profile, on the right-hand side, if you notice, it says it's the master of the profile. I have profile grouping set up in my database where I have linked members of John's family. So those are the profile grouping, but I can also see all of the related profiles to John Hunt as well from here. And then to turn it off, you just right click again and say view hide profile grouping. All right, the next one, I'm going to change my view. So I have changed this to a full view, which I will give you details about in a little bit. But if you notice, every other row is gray. That's just telling me that this is a full view. And if you right click, the next menu item that I want to show you is row color. So I can change the row color on any view that I have created that is a full view. So if I click on that, I get this little screen and I can change the color. So if I want dark purple or pink, whichever, I can change the row. And then you can also check the box to apply this to all of your views. You can't change the color. This is only going to apply to the user that's logged in and the user ID that's making these changes. It doesn't apply to everybody's views. It's just yours. So if you change this to an ugly color, it is something you will have to look at till you change it again. The next button here is called Move Buttons Left Right. So those data grid tool buttons on the left-hand side, let's just say you're sick of looking at them over there and you want to move them to the right. My data grid tool buttons are now on the right-hand side. And to move them back, I'll just move them back to the left because I'm kind of used to looking at them over there. Now, the next one that I have here is view info. So what this is going to do is this is giving me the information of this particular data grid view. So it's telling me the name, it's telling me the columns that are in here, if there's any formulas, what the labels, whether the labels may vary from what the actual field is. So all of that information is available here by clicking that. And any of you that have, let's see, view totals and view statistics, these are the last two, and they also are the same two data grid tool buttons on the left-hand side. Okay, so that takes care of that. So now what we're going to talk about, I mentioned two different types of data grid views earlier. So there are two types of views. One of them is called an optimized view, and the other one is called the full view. And an optimized view is got a couple different types of characteristics to it. So an optimized view, when you're creating these views in the system, so if I'm in view settings, part of one of the decisions that you have to make is what tables in the database do you want to use for your view? And that answer is going to depend on which module you're in. So maybe you're looking for gift fields, maybe you're looking for grant fields, so you're in the grant module, or maybe it's profile fields. So an optimized view is a view that's only linked to one table in the database. All of your default views are optimized views, so they are only linked, in this case, for the default view in the profile module is only linked to the profile table. That means that you can only put fields of data into your view from the profile table. So that's one characteristic. Another characteristic is that your searching fields are limited. Let me go back to my default view here. And if you go to search by, you can see that I only have 4 fields that I can use for my searching. If I go back to my full view and I click on the search by, I can search by any of those fields that are in the current view. So that's another characteristic. You can also see that from a visual perspective, my full views, every other row is gray, whereas my optimized views, the row colors are all the same. They're all the same color as what I have chosen. Okay, a full view, we've seen, you can also do wildcard searching in the full view. So you can use an asterisk as part of your searching. That is, instead of just being able to type in one field, that's also an option. A lot of people will use full views for creating some of the queries that I was talking about earlier, where one of the questions I wanted answered was, show me a list of all of the donor advised funds that have had no gifts between 2015 and 2017. That's a query that I'm probably either going to want to run a report on or export the data. So full views are typically used for that type of query. One thing is that they may, depending on the number of records and the complexity of the view, they may perform, full views may perform a little bit slower, and moving between the fields and the records in a full view might be a little bit slower as well. So those are some of the differences between the full and the optimized view. Most people use the optimized views for just quick searching. Like if you're searching for the last name Hunt, everybody with the last name Hunt or Smith, typically the default views are what's used, and those are optimized. What we're going to do now is we're going to walk through what it looks like to create a view. So I'm going to go to my view settings button, and then what we're looking at here is your view settings window. So the first tab that we have is views, and you can see the view name, and you can see a description that may have been added. Now there's a little button up here that says view all. If you click on this, so right now I can see any view that I have created that is a system view that came with your system, or that somebody else has created that they've chosen to share. So that's what's visible to me right now. But if I click on view all, I can see all views that have been created by anyone in your organization, whether they've been shared or not. And then as we scroll over, we can see what the type of view is. So if you notice that it says either full or optimized, it's also going to tell you who created the view. There's a column for the view name or who created it. We also have a column that tells us what tables are being used in this particular view. The description, if it's a system view. So there's a couple of them that will say yes, those came with your system. And then you've also got a column that says shared view. So is this something that was created and shared? And then when it was last changed. So all of that information is visible from here. So you have a couple options for creating a new view. You can actually add a new view from scratch. So you could click on the add button, or you could take a view that's here. For example, I could take my default view, which I happen to be sitting on right now, and say save as. That's going to open a little window for view definition. And what you're going to do here is you're going to give it a unique name. And you're going to decide whether you want this view to be shared. Let's see, 412. And whether it's an optimized or a full view. And then you're also going to want to put in a description. That way, if somebody else is looking at it, they know why it was created. Clearly, a description would be more helpful for people to know whether the view is something that would help them or not. So now I have a new view here called Train 412. I put in my description. It's an optimized view. Who I'm logged in as is NPO. And it's also going to tell me that the table that I'm connected to is profile. So essentially, this is set up exactly the same way as the default view. If you go to the tables tab, I can see that I am connected to the profile table. Now, if you created, let me do another copy here. Let me go back to the default. And I'll save it as. Going to make this one a full view. If I go to my tables tab, I can see the options that I have available to me. So because this is a full view, I can pick from any of these table combinations. For example, let's see, profile and alternate addresses. So what this is going to do is allow me to pull fields into my new view from both the profile and the alternate address tables. Now, one thing I do want to explain here on the right-hand side, if you notice, it says profiles joined to alternate address table via inner join. Essentially, what that's saying is that there's a filter built in by selecting this table combination, saying that you're only going to see profiles that actually have an alternate address. If you've got profiles that don't have an alternate address, they're not going to show up. That's what that inner join is for. And if we scroll down a little bit more, you'll see I also have another table combination profile and alternate address. On the right-hand side, that says profiles joined to alternate address table via outer join. That just means that I'm going to see all profiles in my view, whether they have an alternate address or not. So something to keep in mind when you're choosing your table combinations, when you're creating your view. Another one to think about is if you choose profiles and donor table. So at the very top up here, it doesn't say anything on the right-hand side. So the assumption is it's connected via an inner join. This is going to filter out any profiles that do not have a donor record in your database. So those are some of the things to think about when you are deciding what tables you want to pull fields from. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to move to my columns tab now. And if you notice in this little white bar across the top, I know what view I'm working on because it says train 4-12. So it's always kind of good to make sure, you know, you're changing one of yours clearly because you can only change yours, but that you're not changing one you don't want to change. On the right-hand side are the fields that have been selected to be visible in this view because this is what's in my default. That's what I copied. What's on the left-hand side are fields that are available to you to add to that particular view that you are creating. So you can add fields and you can remove fields. So let's say, for example, let me scroll down on the right-hand side. I don't see any address fields in here. So I want to add address 1. So I'm going to click on the field and I'm going to say add. I want to add address 2. What else do I have in here? Done. Okay. I can also choose fields from profile 2. So when I'm clicking the drop down, these are literally fields that live on the profile 2 tab. And you also have access to salutation because the profile 1, profile 2, and salutation tabs, the values are in the profile table. So you can choose fields from your salutation here as well. One little tip that I want to give you here is if you, I need to find a code, title code. Okay, so I just clicked on title code. There's a little button here that says code description. If I click on that instead of the add button, hold on, sorry. That actually, all right, let me cancel this for a minute and let me go into the fun module because there's definitely something I want to show you. Okay, so if I go to the columns tab and okay, so I have an admin fee code on the fund record itself on the fund 1 tab. If I highlight that on the left-hand side and click code description, what that's doing for me, which is really kind of nice, is it's pulling in 2 fields. It's pulling in the actual code, the fee code itself, but you may not know right off from the code what that is. So it's also pulling in the fee code description. So I'm going to have 2 fields on here, both the fee code itself and the fee code description. So if I generate this, as you can see on the far right-hand side, here's my fee code description along with what the actual fee code is itself. Okay, so that is helpful. Another thing I want to show you here under columns is the date established. So established date, I'm going to remove that. Actually, I'm going to add that back. You also have the ability to choose what your dates look like. You can choose whether it's an actual year or whether it's a spelled out like April 12th, 2023. That's also an option that you have available to you when you're putting dates into your views. So let me come back here. Okay. So yes, anything that you want to add, pull it from the left-hand side over to the right. You also have the ability to change the label. So if I click in the label field, I can come in here and edit any of the labels. So if you notice here for my alpha sort field, I've changed it the label to sort name. So that's what's visible to me when I'm looking at the view. You can move these fields around. If you highlight a field on the right, you can move it up, you can move it down, you can remove it from the list altogether if you decide you don't want it. So these are all the things available to you from the columns tab. You're designing what this report's going to look like and what fields are going to show up in the view. Now, the next tab that you have here is selections. So selections, sorting, and affiliations work the same way that they do when you run a report, when you run a canned report. Selections tab is used to filter the records. So for example, if I wanted to filter these profiles and only see active profiles, I could do that. So I just pulled over the active profile field and said yes to yes. You can sort the record. So if you don't want it alpha sort field, you could sort by the annual report name or the last name. Any of the fields that are over here on the left can be used for sorting, ascending, descending. And then if you also want to filter your view by using an affiliation code, you can do that. Now, if you notice, I have this awesome red message at the top here that says current view is optimized. Affiliation selection is not available. This is another difference between a full view and an optimized view. You cannot use the affiliation tab to filter records for optimized views. And then once you've made all your changes, you're going to click on the Save button at the bottom, and you can click on Generate. And that's going to generate the new view that you just created. Now, one other thing I want to show you here is I still have highlighted Train 4-12. If I go to View Selections, I can see everything that is been configured in this particular view. The table, the fields that are there, the actual field name versus the label name, if there's any filtering or sorting, that's also here as well. One other thing that I want to show you before I turn it over to any additional questions and turn it back to Amy, there's something called a user default view. So for instance, the other day, I had somebody that I was working with that needed to see the check number in the item entry tab in accounts payable. So in accounts payable, the item entry tab, make this bigger. If there is a payment in here, for example, like this admin payment, or if I have a list of grant payments that are in here, the check number is not visible. So what we did is we added the check number field as the very first column so she could see that. but instead we went into view settings and we said we wanted to save that view, default view, as a user default view. So what that means is whenever she goes into accounts payable and goes into the item entry tab, she is now going to see her user default view with that check number field in the very first column. So she never has to go looking for her check numbers. It's always there. So there's two types of, there's a user default view, which is linked to the specific user that created it, the user ID, so it'll only apply to that person. And then there's also a foundation default. So if there is a view that you want the whole staff to see every time they log into FIMS and maybe go into the profile module or the gift module, they want them to see the same set of fields. That foundation default view can be created and used as well. Okay. I know I could keep talking about data grids, but we are running out of time. So I will turn it back to Amy.
Great. Thanks, Robin. That was a lot of information. And there have been some great questions that Leanne has covered all in the Q&A section, as well as provided some links for some further explanation as well. Let me quick share my screen. So if you have any other questions and would like to reach out, feel free to send an email to either hello@npac.com or at fims@npac.com. Oh, let's see. It looks like Barb had a question for Robin. Robin, can you answer, how can you know the join if there's no description?
So typically the rule of thumb that I use is if there's no description for the join, to assume it's an inner join.
Okay, great. Hopefully that answers Barb's question. So assume it's an inner join if there's no description. Otherwise, Correct. It should be listed.
Yeah, most of the tables are inner joins.
Great, thank you. All right. Please reach out if you have further questions and we'll get our team on that. And then we will see you in 2 months at our next Let's Talk Solutions. The date will be forthcoming. And please feel free to submit ideas for what you'd like to see on Let's Talk Solutions. Send me an email or send it to fims@npac.com and the team will review it and see what we can come up with. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Have a great day.